HFY Vanguard, when the odds are impossible, humans make history. And that history starts here.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and on his farm he had a cow, E-I-E-I-O.
Jack Harmon had learned long ago that survival on the fringe of civilization required two things: steady hands and a willingness to improvise. 5 years removed from Earth's military, the skills that once kept him alive in war zones now paid his bills on a border planet where half the population didn't even have the same number of fingers as he did. His workshop, a converted garage wedged between a spice market and a shuttle repair dock, was cluttered with devices that hummed, sparked, or occasionally smoked in protest. To outsiders, it looked like chaos. To Jack, it was order, the only order he trusted in a galaxy that seemed determined to keep humans in their place. The air inside his shop was hot and metallic, tinged with the smell of ionized circuits. 3 battered industrial fans worked overtime, pushing around the same heavy air without offering much relief. Jack's gray mechanic's uniform clung to his shoulders and chest, streaked with oil stains that never truly washed out. Sweat dripped from his brow as he bent over a disassembled Praxian communicator. The machine had 6 sockets meant for 6-fingered hands. He only had 5. With practiced patience, he adjusted his gloves and muttered, "Damn Praxian design, always hiding the power couplings where no human hands are meant to reach." That was Jack's life, now wrestling alien technology into a shape that humans could work with. Out here on the rim, his stubborn ingenuity had made him valuable, though not necessarily beloved. Some species respected him, others merely tolerated his presence, but all paid when their gadgets broke down, and he was the only one who could fix them. It was honest work, and it kept him far from the politics of Earth or the commands of admirals. The sound of soft footsteps at his doorway broke his concentration. Jack didn't need to look up. He already knew who it was. There she stood on again, his quiet, curious shadow. A little girl barely 3 feet tall. Her skin the pale lilac shade of spring blossoms. Her hair a silky cascade of lavender. Her pointed ears twitched with each sound as if attuned to frequencies Jack couldn't hear. She said nothing, simply hovered at the entrance, as though deciding if today she was welcome. "Hey there, little one," Jack called, softening his normally gruff tone. "Come to watch the human wrestle with alien junk again?" The child nodded, once solemn as ever, and stepped inside. She moved with a strange grace, light on her feet, each gesture deliberate. Jack had never learned her name. She had appeared 3 months ago like a ghost and kept returning, always alone, always silent, always watching. He suspected she belonged to one of the wealthier Nilarian families in the district beyond the market, but no guardian ever came looking for her. "Same rules as always," Jack said, pointing toward the familiar stool he kept beside the bench. "Don't touch anything that glows, smokes, or makes funny noises." The girl obeyed, scampering over to her stool with a faint shimmer of her silver tunic. The fabric caught the light in ripples, as though woven from liquid moonlight. She perched there like a tiny sentinel, her wide eyes following every movement of his hands. Jack pretended to scowl, though he felt an odd comfort in her presence. "Want to see something neat?" he asked, lifting what looked like a twisted shard of metal. With a press of his thumb, the object unfolded into a perfect cube of shifting blue light. "Tandorian puzzle box," he explained. "They use them to teach kids spatial reasoning." Her eyes widened, curiosity breaking through her usual composure. She reached forward instinctively, then hesitated, remembering his rule. Jack chuckled. "This one's safe. Go on." Her small hands cradled the glowing cube as though it were a precious relic. She turned it slowly, marveling at the changing patterns, and for the first time Jack caught the faintest hint of a smile. Something about that expression hit him harder than any battlefield memory. He went back to work, speaking aloud more than usual, as if narrating for her benefit. "See this?" he said, pointing to the communicator's guts. "Designed for 6 fingers. But if you bypass this circuit and reroute through the secondary power node, you can make it run on 5. Sometimes all it takes is ignoring the rules written by people who never thought of us." The girl nodded seriously, as though she understood. Jack grinned. Most locals treated him with a mix of respect and suspicion. Humans were rare this far from Earth. But this child, She looked at him with nothing but unfiltered curiosity. That alone was worth more than all the credits he made fixing hover scooters for Drylaxian merchants. Later that afternoon, Jack asked, "Hand me that plasma cutter." He pointed. She hopped down, carried it carefully, and placed it in his palm with grave dignity. "Thanks, assistant," he teased, giving her a wink. Her lips curved upward, an actual smile this time, shy and fleeting but real. When the sun dipped low, throwing long shadows across the garage, she slid off the stool and padded toward the door. "Heading home?" Jack asked. She nodded. Her lavender hair caught the last light as she vanished around the corner. That night, Jack lingered in the workshop longer than usual, staring at the empty stool. He had grown used to her silent company. Strange how quickly a routine formed the human mechanic in his uninvited, wordless apprentice. Days passed. One day, then two, then three. No sign of her. At first, Jack brushed it off. Maybe her family kept her busy. But by the fourth day, an ache of worry settled in his gut. He caught himself glancing at the doorway whenever the entry sensor chimed, only to be disappointed by clients seeking repairs. "She's probably just busy," he muttered as he closed up shop that evening. Or her people took her on some trip. But his voice lacked conviction. Instinct told him something was wrong, and instinct was what had kept him alive when orders and logic failed. By the fifth day, worry hardened into resolve. He scrubbed his hands clean of grease, tugged on his best navy shirt, and headed into the Nalarian Quarter. The district lay just beyond the commercial sector, a different world entirely. Sleek, curving architecture shimmered with iridescent hues, casting prismatic reflections across polished walkways. Alien flora glowed faintly in decorative gardens, responding to subtle movements like living art installations. Jack's heavy boots echoed against the stone, making him painfully aware of his out-of-place humanity. He stopped a gardener tending luminous vines. "Excuse me," Jack said, lifting his hand to indicate height. "I'm looking for a girl about this tall. Purple hair. She visits my workshop." The gardener's ears twitched, his face unreadable. Why would a human seek a Nalarian child? "She's been coming to my shop for months. She hasn't shown up in nearly a week. I'm concerned." The Nalarian offered only a dismissive shake of the head. "Many families live here. I cannot help you." One after another, Jack met the same cold wall of silence. Nalarian residents eyed him with suspicion, their voices polite but firm. They would not help. By sunset, his search felt hopeless. Then he overheard two women speaking as they passed. Poor little Leary, one sighed. Such a tragedy for one so young. Leary. At last a name. Jack slowed his pace ears, straining. "The House of Talon has suffered much," the second replied. "First Lord Talon's son in the border war, and now his granddaughter's accident." Her optical nerves burned beyond healing, the first whispered. "The healers say it is permanent. Lady Atara must be devastated." The words struck Jack like a hammer blow. His chest tightened, breath caught. Leary blind. Those wide, curious eyes darkened forever. He stood frozen, fighting the surge of grief and anger until instinct propelled him forward. "Excuse me," he said, forcing calm. "This girl, Leary, did she sometimes visit the commercial district, a human workshop?" The women stiffened, startled by his intrusion. Why would a human concern himself with the House of Talon's affairs, one asked coolly. Jack's voice softened, honest. "She's my friend." The taller woman studied him. Recognition flickered. "You are the mechanic. She spoke of you often. She said you fixed the impossible." Jack swallowed hard. Is she all right?" "She lives," the woman answered carefully. "But without sight, an Ilarian is cut off from our ways. Our people learn through vision. She is lost to us now." Jack barely heard the rest. His mind already raced with possibilities, sketches forming in his imagination. If her eyes no longer worked, maybe there was another path, not repairing the nerves, bypassing them entirely. "Where can I find her?" he asked. The women exchanged wary glances before pointing toward the northern rise. A grand estate gleamed there, dominating the skyline. But they will never admit a human, one warned. Jack nodded, thanking them. He turned back toward his workshop, his stride purposeful, his jaw set. He had no intention of walking into a noble's estate uninvited. He had a better plan, one that would demand sleepless nights, every scrap of skill he had, and maybe miracles. "Hang in there, little one," he murmured, already pulling salvage parts from storage bins the moment he stepped inside. "Jack's going to fix this." The workshop felt emptier without her. Even with machines buzzing and plasma torches crackling, silence pressed down on Jack Harmon like a weight. He found himself glancing at the stool in the corner, half expecting the little lilac-skinned girl to appear with her silent watchfulness. But the stool remained empty, a hollow reminder of her absence. He tried to bury himself in work. Hover scooters came in with malfunctioning stabilizers, a Praxian communicator needed recalibration, and a Dralaxian client wanted modifications to fit his oversized hands. Normally, Jack lost himself in the puzzle of alien machines, the delicate dance of problem and solution. But now, every circuit he soldered, every panel he reattached, reminded him of another puzzle he couldn't solve: why a child had disappeared from his life. It wasn't until the overheard conversation in the Nalarian quarter that the truth landed like a blade to the gut. Leary, his quiet shadow, the little one who had smiled shyly at his jokes and handed him tools with solemn grace, blind, permanently. Jack spent that night pacing his workshop, unable to rest. He replayed the women's words again and again. Her optical nerves burned beyond healing. He pictured her small hands clutching the puzzle cube, her wide eyes alight with curiosity. Then he imagined those same eyes clouded, staring into a darkness she could never escape. His chest tightened until he had to press a hand against the workbench just to breathe. For Nalarian, sight was not just a sense, it was the foundation of their culture. Their art, language, even education depended on visual cues. To be born blind was rare enough, but to lose sight as a child meant being cut adrift from almost every aspect of their society. She would never read their shimmering glyphs, never join her peers in visual learning games, never experience the luminous beauty her people wove into every aspect of life. She would be a shadow among them, pitied and isolated. Jack slammed a wrench onto the bench with a clang. "Not if I can help it." The words surprised him, spoken aloud, but once voiced, they rooted deep. He had no obligation. She wasn't his daughter. She wasn't even human. By all logic, he should walk away. But logic had never been Jack's compass. He thought of Earth, of comrades bleeding out in his arms, of civilians caught in crossfire, of the endless refrain of "not our problem" from commanding officers. Jack had walked away from that life because he refused to believe human decency ended where regulations began. He couldn't save everyone, but maybe he could save one little girl. Jack began by digging through his scrap bins: old ocular implants from a retired miner, a broken sonar array salvaged from a downed shuttle, heat mapping goggles too damaged for resale, pieces all broken in their own way, but each held fragments of possibility. He cleared his bench, pushed aside paying jobs, and sketched on his tablet. His handwriting was messy, his diagrams rough, but ideas poured out faster than he could capture them. If Laurie's optical nerves were beyond repair, then bypass them. Feed her brain different signals, thermal images, echoes, electromagnetic fields. Let her mind build a new kind of sight. It was insane. No physician had tried it, no scholar had mapped the pathways. But humans had a history of turning impossible into done, and Jack was nothing if not stubborn. The first night he worked until dawn, fueled by caffeine and sheer will. His hands shook from exhaustion, but he kept soldering, wiring, adjusting. The visor began to take shape. Sleek metal curves shaped to fit Nalarian features, lightweight enough for a child, adjustable to grow with a year. He cannibalized a dozen devices each time, muttering to himself, "Sorry, buddy, but this is for something bigger." By the second night, hallucinations crept in from lack of sleep. He thought he saw her small silhouette on the stool, watching silently. He even spoke to the empty air. "Almost done, kiddo. Just hold on." His friends, if he could call them that, noticed. A Dralaxian merchant stopped by for a repair and frowned at the chaos. "You look half-dead human. What are you building?" Jack waved him off. "Just a project." "Not for profit," the merchant sniffed. "You'll starve that way." Jack only smiled grimly. Not everything worth doing pays in credits. Word spread quickly in a settlement where gossip traveled faster than starships. Whispers of the human mechanic locked in his shop, burning through supplies, calling in favors, trading services for components no one else could imagine using together. Some said he'd gone mad. Others said he was building a weapon. None guessed the truth: he was building hope. By the fourth day, the prototype was ready. Sleek silver shaped like a visor that would wrap around Leary's head. Wires laced beneath the surface connecting processors to a tiny power cell. It wasn't perfect. Resolution would be crude at first. The sensory input might overwhelm her. But it was a start. Jack stared at it on his bench, every muscle aching, eyes burning from lack of rest. For the first time in years, he felt afraid not of war, not of nobles, not of death, but of failure. What if it didn't work? What if he gave her false hope? He thought of her smile, the one that had lit up his dingy workshop brighter than any lamp. That memory steadied him. It'll work, he told himself. It has to. Morning sunlight spilled through the door as the entry chime pinged softly. Jack rubbed his bleary eyes, expecting another client. Instead, he froze. There she was. Leary stood uncertainly in the doorway, her once bright eyes clouded and unfocused. Beside her loomed a tall Nalarian male in formal attire, every inch the household steward. His hand rested protectively on her shoulder, his expression a mask of disdain as he surveyed the human's greasy workshop. Jack's heart leapt into his throat. "Hey there, little one," he said, crouching down, forcing gentleness into his voice. "I've missed you." She turned toward his voice, her head tilting uncertainly. Then in a small, trembling voice, the first words Jack had ever heard from her lips, she said, "Jack." The sound hit him like a punch and a bomb all at once. He took her outstretched hand. "Yeah, it's me. Right here." The steward cleared his throat, musical voice devoid of warmth. "I am Von Stewart of House Talon. The child insisted on returning here. It is against Lord Talon's wishes, but she would not relent." Jack hardly heard him. He was too busy holding Leary's tiny hand, feeling her trust despite the darkness that now veiled her world. "I heard what happened," he said softly. "I'm sorry." "Your sympathy is noted," Vaughn replied stiffly. "But understand this visit is irregular. You meddle in affairs beyond your station human." Jack rose, meeting Vaughn's gaze without flinching. "Maybe, but I have something for her." Vaughn's eyes narrowed. "What device is it?" Jack retrieved the visor from his bench. It gleamed faintly in the light, a strange hybrid of human creativity and alien parts. "Not a repair," Jack explained. "A bypass. It converts other signals, heat, sound, electromagnetic fields into patterns her brain can learn to read. Not sight as you know it, but a way forward." Vaughn looked skeptical, even offended. "Our physicians declare the damage irreparable." "Your physicians were thinking like Nalarians," Jack said. "I'm thinking like a human." Leary's clouded eyes turned toward him. Her lips parted. "Can I try it, Jack?" Vaughn hesitated, torn between duty and the child's pleading face. Finally, with a reluctant nod, he said, "Proceed. But know if this harms her, Lord Talon will hold you accountable." Jack knelt, his fingers trembling only slightly as he fitted the visor over her delicate features. He adjusted the straps, connected the power cell, and whispered, "Okay, little one. This might feel strange. Just focus. Let your brain do the work." He activated the device. For a moment, nothing. Then Leary gasped, clutching his forearms. I, I can see something," she whispered. "It's not like before. It's shadows and light, but I know where things are." She turned her head slowly, deliberately. "That's your big table, and that's the stool where I sit." Jack's throat tightened. "That's right," he managed, voice hoarse. "What about me?" She reached forward, her small hand brushing his face with startling accuracy. "You're warm, bigger than Vaughn, like a person-shaped light." Jack laughed, blinking away the blur in his own eyes. "That's me, kiddo." Leary took a tentative step, then another, navigating around a toolbox without stumbling. "I can walk by myself again," she said, wonder lacing her voice. Vaughn's stern mask cracked into amazement. "Remarkable," he murmured. "Our healer said nothing could be done." Jack straightened, exhausted but proud. Sometimes it just takes seeing the problem differently. Leary beamed her joy, pure and unrestrained. "Thank you, Jack." At that moment, Jack knew every sleepless night had been worth it. For 3 days after the visor's first activation, Jack felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. He returned to his usual repairs, hoverboards, communicator nodes, atmospheric regulators. But every time his gaze drifted to the stool in the corner, he no longer felt emptiness. He pictured Leary's delighted smile, remembered her voice, as she named objects around the workshop, and it filled him with something dangerously close to pride. He hadn't expected her to return so soon. Yet on the fourth morning, just as he was elbow deep in an atmospheric regulator, the hiss of his shop door opening pulled his attention. Jack looked up expecting his Dralaxian client. Instead, four Nalarian soldiers stepped inside. They were no ordinary guards. Their armor shimmered like living metal plates, shifting in iridescent hues with each movement. Each carried a staff that Jack knew with a neural command could morph into a lethal energy weapon. Their presence made the entire workshop feel smaller, like predators had stepped into a cage with their prey. The lead soldier's voice was formal, resonant, devoid of warmth. "Jack Harmon, your presence is required at the House of Talon." Jack set down his tools carefully. His pulse quickened, but his expression remained calm. "Is this about Leary? Is she all right?" The soldiers exchanged brief glances behind their semi-transparent visors. "The child is well," the leader said. "Beyond that, we are not authorized to discuss. You will come with us now." It wasn't a request. Jack considered reaching for the hidden pulse pistol under his bench, but discarded the thought instantly. If House Talon wanted him dead, a pistol wouldn't change the outcome. Better to walk in alive and see what awaited him. "Give me 5 minutes," he said. The leader inclined his head slightly. "You have 5. In the cramped washroom at the back, Jack scrubbed grease from his hands and face, swapping his stained mechanic's uniform for the cleanest shirt he owned, a dark blue one with only a few faint stains. He studied his reflection in the cracked mirror, a weathered face, short-cropped blonde hair, stubble that made him look perpetually unshaven. He didn't look like someone worthy of an audience with nobility. He looked like what he was, a soldier-turned-mechanic clinging to survival on the fringes. When he emerged, the soldiers moved into formation around him, one in front, one behind, one on each side. As they marched him through the commercial district, alien traders and passers-by stopped to stare. Jack felt heat rise to his face. Being escorted by elite guards was as good as wearing shackles. To most, it looked like he'd already been condemned. The streets shifted from the rough, utilitarian structures of the market into the elegance of the Nalarian Quarter. Wide boulevards lined with bioluminescent trees stretched ahead, and polished walkways shimmered with embedded crystal veins. At the far end, atop a rise, the Talon estate loomed. Up close, it was more fortress than mansion. Towers of gleaming white stone soared into the sky, their surfaces refracting sunlight into dazzling rainbows. Living plants entwined with the architecture, pulsing faintly as though alive with their own rhythm. Gates of carved silver stood open, but the message was clear: this was not a place for humans. Inside, Jack was led through an atrium that stole his breath despite his anxiety. Water spiraled upward against gravity, weaving luminous patterns through the air. The scent of spices mingled with something sweet and sharp, unlike anything Earth had ever produced. "Wait here," the lead guard commanded, halting Jack in the center of the vast chamber. The soldiers spread to the corners, silent as statues. Minutes dragged. Jack clasped his hands behind his back, fighting the urge to fidget. He thought of Leary. If she was here, maybe he'd get to see her. If not, well, he had to survive whatever test was coming. At last, a side door opened. An elderly Nalarian male entered, his skin a deep indigo hair, silver and styled in elaborate waves. He wore robes embroidered with shifting light patterns that seemed almost alive. His presence radiated authority, every step measured, every glance sharp. "So," he said, voice carrying across the hall like a judge pronouncing sentence, "you are the human who gave sight to my granddaughter." Jack swallowed. "Lord Talon, I presume." The elder circled him slowly, predator, assessing prey. "You created this device in what? 4 days. With salvaged parts and a few theories," Jack admitted. "I'm good with my hands." The guards stiffened at his casual tone. Jack cursed himself silently. Military habit: deflect with humor when you're cornered. But this wasn't a battlefield. "Do you know the penalty for interfering with a noble house's affairs without permission?" Lord Talon asked, voice sharp. Jack's mouth went dry. "No, sir. Death, or worse." The word hung in the air like a blade. Jack's heart hammered, but he forced himself to meet the elder's eyes. "With all due respect, I'd do it again. That little girl deserved a chance to experience the world, regardless of politics." Silence fell. The guards shifted, tightening grips on their staffs. Then Lord Talon's expression cracked into something unexpected amusement. Remarkable. You humans never cease to surprise me with your audacity. Before Jack could respond, another door opened. A small figure darted through, moving with surprising confidence. Grandfather, you promised you wouldn't scare him. Leary's voice rang across the chamber. She ran directly to Jack Visor, gleaming with delicate silver filigree, and wrapped her arms around his waist. Instinctively, Jack placed a protective hand on her shoulder. Relief crashed over him. She was safe, alive, smiling. Lord Talon's stern expression softened fractionally. I was merely testing his character, little one. Jack blinked, confused. Testing? A man who cowers when faced with consequences is not worthy of our gratitude, the elder explained. Gratitude, Jack echoed. A new voice answered, melodic and rich. Did you think we would punish you for returning our most precious treasure to the light? Jack looked up. His breath caught. She stood in the doorway, an Illyrian woman, tall and graceful, clad in a gown the color of midnight skies. Her violet hair flowed like liquid silk, framing a face that balanced strength and delicacy. But it was her eyes that seized him, large, luminous, flecked with silver, fixed on him with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. Jack Harmon, Lord Talon said formally, may I present Lady Atara of House Talon, mother of Leary, widow of my late son. Jack bowed stiffly. Lady Atara. Her gaze lingered on him longer than custom dictated, something unspoken passing between them. Then she smiled faintly, a curve of lips that sent warmth through Jack's chest. It was you then, the mechanic my daughter would not stop speaking of. Jack glanced at Leary, who beamed up at him. I was just helping a friend. Nilarian custom demands we honor such help, Atara said. Her voice was music, her posture regal, but her eyes held something else. Curiosity, admiration, perhaps even something more. Lord Talon raised a hand. Tonight a celebration will be held. House Talon acknowledges its debt. Jack Harmon will be honored as Talon Van, friend of the house, with all privileges and protection. A gasp rippled through the guards. No human had ever been granted such a title. Jack shifted uncomfortably. That's really not necessary. I was just... To refuse would cause greater offense, Atara interrupted gently. She stepped closer, adjusting the collar of his shirt with delicate fingers. As our guest, you must allow us this honor. Jack's breath caught at her nearness. He forced himself to nod. Then, I'd be honored. Leary tugged his hand. Promise you'll sit next to me at the feast. Jack smiled down at her. Promise. Lord Talon's eyes narrowed as though he sensed more than Jack intended to reveal. But he only nodded. Very well. The celebration begins at moonrise. See that our guest is properly prepared. The soldier stepped aside as Atara gestured for Jack to follow. Come, she said softly. We must ensure you are ready for what lies ahead. As Jack walked beside her, heart still pounding, he knew one thing with absolute certainty: his life had just changed forever. The Talon estate transformed as moonrise approached. What had seemed a fortress by day became a palace of light by night. Crystal towers glowed with inner radiance, gardens pulsed with bioluminescent flora, and music drifted through wide corridors, its alien harmonies vibrating in Jack's bones. For a man used to the clang of tools and the whir of engines, it felt like stepping into another universe. He had been given chambers lavish beyond anything he'd known, where attendants fitted him with formal attire adapted to human form. The deep blue fabric hugged his broad shoulders, silver patterns traced across the sleeves to echo Talon heraldry. When he caught his reflection, he almost didn't recognize himself. Not the grease-stained mechanic of the border district, but something closer to nobility. The thought unsettled him. Atara herself came to escort him. She wore a gown that shimmered like captured starlight, her violet hair adorned with delicate ornaments of silver. The sight of her stole the breath from his lungs. He managed a hoarse, "You look," before words failed. "As do you," she replied softly, eyes lingering on him longer than propriety allowed. She adjusted the collar of his attire, her fingers brushing his skin. The contact sent an electric awareness racing through him. For a fleeting moment, neither moved. Then she stepped back, mask of composure returning. The grand hall was already filled with guests, hundreds of Nalarians, clad in iridescent finery. The moment Jack entered at Atara's side, conversations faltered. Eyes turned. Some held curiosity, others open disdain. A human among them was novelty enough. A human honored by house talent unthinkable. Atara leaned close, her voice low. Remember, speak only when addressed directly. Accept all gifts with both hands. And whatever happens, do not refuse the wine. Jack gave a tight smile. Sounds simple enough. Lord Talon stood at the center with Leary, who wore a delicate silver dress. Her visor had been refined into a headpiece that blended seamlessly with Nalarian aesthetics. She waved at Jack enthusiastically, ignoring the stiff posture of nobles around her. Jack, she called. Gasps rippled at her informality. Jack grinned despite himself. The elder raised a hand. Music faded. Tonight, Lord Talon declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. We honor an outsider who has proven himself worthy of esteem. Jack Harmon of Earth returned light to one of our own, defying the limits our healers deem absolute. For this house, Talon grants him the title Talon Ven, Friend of the House. Murmurs swept the crowd. Shock, outrage, disbelief. To grant such a title to a human was unprecedented. Yet as Jack knelt, as Atara had coached him, and Lord Talon placed a crystal pendant around his neck, the act became fact. He was marked bound to their house by honor and tradition. Some applauded politely. Others whispered darkly. One man in particular stood near the front, tall and broad-shouldered, eyes burning with contempt. Atara noticed Jack's gaze and whispered, "That is Lord Nevin of House Prayton, our rival for generations. He will not forgive this insult." The celebration resumed, though. Undercurrents of tension flowed beneath the surface. Nobles approached Jack with thin smiles, some genuinely curious about his inventions, others testing him with barbed questions. He navigated the exchanges awkwardly, but held his ground, leaning on Atara's discreet guidance. Through it all, Leary remained close, proudly introducing him as though he were already family. Later, on a balcony overlooking gardens that glowed with shifting colors, Jack finally found a moment alone with Atara. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of alien blossoms. She stood beside him, close enough that her sleeve brushed his arm. "You handled yourself admirably," she said. "Many expected you to falter." "I had an excellent teacher," Jack replied, turning to meet her gaze. Her silver-flecked eyes caught the moonlight, mesmerizing. The silence between them stretched, charged with unspoken possibility. Atara's lips curved faintly. "You are unlike any human I have met. Direct, unpretentious, refreshing." Jack chuckled. "That's one word for it." He hesitated, then added, "Back home we have a saying, it takes a village to raise a child. It means everyone shares responsibility for the young, not just parents." Atara's expression softened. "Fascinating. Nalarians guard our children fiercely, rarely allowing outsiders near. Yet Leary wandered to your workshop and I allowed it. After her father died, she grew restless, willful. I did not wish to cage her spirit further." Jack's voice gentled. "I'm sorry for your loss." "It was 3 years ago," she said. "Our mourning has ended." Her eyes locked onto his, unflinching. The meaning was clear. Jack's heart pounded. "Lady Atara." "When we are alone," she interrupted softly, "call me Atara." Her name on his tongue felt dangerous, intimate. "Atara," he breathed. She stepped closer, so near he could feel the coolness of her skin, the subtle spice of her scent. "Humans," she whispered, "speak so directly. Nalarians dance around meaning. Yet I find your bluntness refreshing." Jack's voice was rough. "In human custom, this would be the moment I'd kiss you." Her smile deepened. "Then perhaps we should honor human custom as well." Their lips met, tentative at first, then certain, hungry. The kiss ignited a fire in him he hadn't felt in years. Different yet familiar, alien yet profoundly human. When they pulled apart, both were breathing harder. "We should return," she said reluctantly, though she did not step away. "Yes," Jack agreed, equally reluctant. Back in the hall, Jack noticed Nevin's eyes fixed on him, burning with hatred. He realized then that his presence had not only won him a place in House Talon, it had drawn the attention of enemies willing to do anything to undermine him. The night stretched on with music, dancing, and rituals Jack barely understood. He played his role, careful not to misstep. Yet beneath the spectacle, shadows gathered. Nobles whispered in corners. Lord Nevin slipped away his departure, unnoticed by most but not by Atara. Her hand tightened briefly on Jack's arm, a silent warning. When the celebration finally wound down, Jack found himself again on the balcony with Atara. The gardens glowed like constellations, and for a moment the world felt distant, hushed. "You've changed everything," Atara said quietly. "For Lyri, for this house, even for me." Jack turned, studying her. "Is that a good thing?" Her eyes searched his face. "I do not yet know, but I cannot deny the pull I feel." Before Jack could answer, a discreet cough interrupted. Von the steward stood at the balcony entrance, his expression grave. "My lady," he said, "forgive the intrusion, but there is an urgent matter." Atara stiffened. "What is it?" Von's gaze flicked to Jack before returning to her. "It is the young mistress, Lyri. She has vanished. Her visor is gone." The world tilted. Jack's blood ran cold. "What do you mean vanished?" Atara demanded. "She was last seen retiring to her chambers. When her attendant checked, she was gone. Sensors detected a transport signature in the East Garden." Otara's voice shook with fury. "Prayton." Lord Talon appeared moments later, his face grim. "Summon the guards. Seal the estate. We have been violated." An incoming transmission cut through the command center's air. The holographic display flickered, revealing Lord Nevin's smug visage. "Talon," he sneered, "I trust your celebration is lively." "Return my granddaughter," Lord Talon thundered. Nevin's smile widened. "She is unharmed for now, but I require something in exchange. The human and the device he created. Bring him to the old boundary marker within the hour alone, or I cannot guarantee the child's well-being." The transmission ended. Silence fell heavy and suffocating. "I'll go," Jack said immediately. "It's a trap," Atara snapped, gripping his arm. "He will kill you both once he has what he wants." Jack covered her hand with his own. "Maybe, but I have a few human tricks he won't expect." Lord Talon studied him, eyes narrowing. "Perhaps it is time we learned why humanity has survived against all odds." He turned to a guard. "Escort him to his workshop. Give him whatever he requires." Atara pulled Jack aside, her voice fierce. "Return to me. What we began tonight, I would see it completed." Jack cupped her face gently, forcing a smile despite the storm inside him. "Count on it. No alien kidnapper is keeping me from finding out where this leads." Their kiss was brief, desperate, filled with unspoken promises. Then Jack turned away, mind already racing with plans. The celebration had ended. The real battle was about to begin. The workshop looked different that night, more like an armory than a mechanic's garage. Jack tore through drawers and bins, scattering half-finished projects across the floor. Every instinct screamed at him that he had little time. The pendant of House Talon still hung heavy against his chest, marking him as friend, but tonight it felt like a target. The Talon guard, signed to watch him, stood in the doorway, shifting uncomfortably as Jack worked. "You humans," he said, voice betraying disbelief. "You take broken parts and twist them into something new. It seems reckless." Jack didn't look up. He was busy gutting a scanner, soldering wires onto a power cell. "We call it improvisation. Where I come from, it's how you survive." Within minutes, he had 3 devices laid out. First, a modified scanner rigged to emit an electromagnetic pulse, strong enough to disable nearby electronics, crude but effective. Second, a metallic sphere that, when triggered, would release dense smoke. Third, what looked like an ordinary repair tool, but hid a thermal sensor interface, allowing him to track heat signatures through smoke or darkness. He checked each twice, then holstered them in his belt. His grease-stained mechanic's uniform felt more honest than any noble attire. The guard frowned. "You go alone," Lady Atara instructed otherwise. Jack gave a grim smile. "Tell her I'm following the plan. She'll understand." The guard's ears twitched uneasily but said no more. The boundary marker stood in a clearing at the edge of dense forest, an ancient stone pillar carved with sigils from both House Talon and House Prayton, remnants of treaties long strained by rivalry. Tonight those symbols mocked their supposed peace. Jack approached alone, senses heightened, adrenaline sharpening the edges of the world. His boots crunched softly on the grass. The pendant at his chest felt like both shield and shackle. Shadows stirred. Lord Nevin emerged, flanked by guards in gleaming armor. Behind them, one more soldier restrained Lyri. Her visor was gone. Fear shone in her lilac eyes, but when she saw Jack, her chin lifted defiantly. "Jack," she cried, voice raw. "Silence, child." Nevin snapped, then turned his smug gaze on Jack. "The human arrives. How refreshingly obedient." Jack's jaw tightened. "Let her go. This is between you and me." Nevin laughed, cold and humorless. "Oh no, first you will provide the specifications for your miraculous device. Then perhaps we'll discuss her release." Jack reached slowly into his pocket, producing a small data crystal. "Everything you need to know is here. Take it. Let her go." One guard approached, extending his hand. Jack let the crystal slip, fumbling deliberately. "Sorry," he muttered, stooping to retrieve it. As he straightened, his thumb pressed a concealed switch. The modified scanner in his pocket hummed once and released a pulse. The effect was immediate. Every powered system in a 10-meter radius died. Praeton armor flickered, shields collapsed, weapons dimmed uselessly. Even Nevin's personal generator sputtered out. "What is this?" Nevin snarled, slapping his chest controls. "EMP," Jack said, already moving. "Crude but effective." He hurled the metallic sphere. It burst, spewing thick smoke that billowed across the clearing, choking vision. The Praeton guards coughed, stumbling. But Jack's visor tool glowed faintly, feeding him thermal outlines. He saw heat signatures, 3 guards, 1 noble, 1 child. He sprinted forward, his body moving with soldier's efficiency honed years ago. The guard holding Leary was momentarily blind, flailing. Jack struck low at a vulnerable joint in the armor, sending the alien sprawling. He caught Leary in his arms, pressing her visor, safely shielded in his pocket, back onto her face. "Hold tight," he whispered. Her arms wrapped around his neck instantly. "I knew you'd come," she breathed. "Always, kiddo." "Stop him!" Nevin roared through the smoke. But his men were stumbling, their equipment useless. Jack bolted toward the tree-lined lungs, burning muscles, straining. Human physiology, forged under higher gravity, gave him an edge. His speed outmatched the Nalarians, his strength carrying Leary easily. Branches whipped past as he plunged into the forest. Behind him, Nevin cursed, his voice echoing through the haze. "This isn't overhuman." Jack activated the third device strapped to his belt. A small transmitter blinked once, sending a coded signal skyward. Moments later, the hum of engines filled the clearing. A Talon transport craft descended, its lights cutting through the smoke. The side hatch slid open, and Atara stood there, clad not in a gown but in practical armor, her eyes blazing with determination. "Hurry," she called, extending her hand. Jack thrust Leary toward her. Atara pulled the child into her arms, relief flooding her features. Jack turned, facing the clearing one last time. Nevin staggered into view, blade drawn, fury twisting his face. "I'll gut you where you stand." But before he could close the distance, another voice rang out. Actually, it said, cold and commanding, "This ends now." Lord Talon stepped from the transport, flanked by 4 elite guards. His robes gleamed with authority, his eyes like steel. "Your actions," Talon declared, voice echoing, "constitute a violation of the Treaty of Houses. Kidnapping a noble child is treachery. The High Council will strip your house of rank." "You have no proof," Nevin spat. "Oh, but I do." Talon gestured, and a drone descended from the treetops, projecting holographic footage of the entire abduction. Nevin's fury turned desperate. He lunged at Jack, blade flashing. Jack sidestepped, instinct guiding him. With a twist, he caught Nevin's wrist, used the alien's momentum against him, and slammed him to the ground. The blade clattered away. Jack pinned him easily, breath steady despite his racing heart. That, Jack said calmly, was a mistake. Within minutes, Praeton's forces were disarmed and bound. Nevin cursed and raged, but his words fell hollow. Jack turned to see Leary safe in Atara's arms. Relief surged through him like fire, leaving him weak-kneed. He crossed to them, brushing a hand over the child's visor. "You okay, kiddo?" She nodded fiercely. "You saved me, just like in your stories." Jack ruffled her hair, his smile faint but genuine. "That's what friends do." Lord Talon approached, his gaze heavy. "Once again, House Talon owes you, Jack Harmon. Your methods are unorthodox but undeniably effective." Jack shrugged. "Humans have always relied on ingenuity. Sometimes the simplest solution is the one your enemy least expects." Atara hadn't moved from Jack's side since he returned. Now her hand found his fingers intertwining, grip tight. "You could have been killed," she whispered, emotion breaking through her composure. "But I wasn't," he said, squeezing back. "Takes more than a few angry aliens to stop a determined human." Her eyes searched his face, luminous and fierce. "And what are you determined to do now?" "Jack Harmon?" Jack remembered their interrupted kiss on the balcony, the promise left unfinished. His heart pounded, but his voice was steady. "I believe," he said softly, "we had something important to finish." Atara's lips curved, her eyes glinting. She leaned closer, her voice for him alone. "Then return with me. Tonight is only the beginning." 3 months later, the Talon estate felt less like an alien palace and more like home. Jack still hadn't grown used to the sheer scale of it, the soaring towers, the shimmering gardens, the ever-present glow of bioluminescent flora. But the workshop Lord Talon had granted him felt familiar. Spacious, well-equipped, stocked with materials he could only have dreamed of before. Here, among the hum of machines and the smell of solder and steel, Jack found his balance. And he wasn't alone anymore. Atara often joined him, her presence both grounding and distracting. Sometimes she stood silently watching him tinker, her violet hair cascading like silk. Other times she teased him gently about his messy human methods, her silver-flecked eyes glowing with warmth. Their bond had deepened quietly but unmistakably. What began with a kiss stolen on a balcony had grown into something undeniable. The scandal had been real, of course. Nobles whispered behind jeweled hands, muttering about propriety and bloodlines. Some had called it an affront, others a novelty. But House Talon's standing and Jack's role in exposing House Praeton's treachery blunted the outrage. Slowly, grudgingly, society adapted. Love, after all, had a way of outlasting politics. It was Leary, though, who transformed most. The little girl who once sat silently on a stool in Jack's workshop had blossomed into an eager apprentice. She wore her visor proudly, its silver filigree decorated with tiny gems of her choosing. She had learned to interpret its signals with astonishing speed. Where once she struggled to take a step unaided, she now darted around the workshop with confident grace. "Look, Jack," she exclaimed one afternoon, presenting a half-finished circuit. "I rerouted the power node to avoid overload." Jack examined her work, whistling low. "Kiddo, you're going to put me out of a job before you're 10. She grinned, her eyes still clouded but alive with purpose shining. "Then you'll just have to invent something new." Jack ruffled her hair, warmth swelling in his chest. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. Atara watched from the doorway, her expression soft. "She has an excellent teacher," she said quietly. Jack turned, meeting her gaze. "She has an excellent mother." Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary, and Leary giggled knowingly. "You're staring at each other again." Jack flushed, but Atara only laughed, her voice musical. "Sharp as ever, my darling." The downfall of House Praeton had rippled across the sector. With Nevin disgraced and his plots laid bare, the High Council stripped his house of rank and holdings. Other noble families watched cautiously, some wary of House Talon's newfound alliance with the human, others intrigued. For the first time in generations, the rigid boundaries between species had begun to blur. Lord Talon himself remained pragmatic. Though he had initially viewed Jack as an interloper, his respect grew after the rescue. He even visited the workshop one evening, observing quietly as Jack and Leary tinkered with a new design. "You humans," the elder mused, "defy expectation. You build from scraps, yet create miracles. You lack refinement, yet find solutions our finest minds overlook. It is unsettling." Jack set down his tool, meeting the old man's gaze. "Sometimes seeing things differently is the only advantage we've got." Lord Talon studied him a long moment, then inclined his head. "Perhaps that is why humanity survives where stronger races have fallen. Do not squander this chance, Talon Ven." It was the closest thing to a blessing Jack could imagine from the patriarch. The union between Jack and Atara was not declared hastily. Nalarians observed long mourning customs, and Atara had lived as a widow for years. Still, when word spread that she intended to bond with the human, the reaction was mixed. Some scoffed, others muttered about scandal, yet curiosity outweighed outrage. The ceremony itself, scheduled for the following month, promised to be unlike any in memory. Jack dreaded the attention, but endured it for her. For them. One evening, as they stood together on a balcony overlooking gardens, awash in silver moonlight, Atara leaned against him, her arms encircling his waist. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. "Regret what?" "Leaving your world." taking this path, becoming part of ours. Jack considered. He thought of Earth, the military, the endless wars, the loneliness that followed. He thought of the empty nights in his workshop before a curious child had wandered through his door. He thought of Atara's hand in his, of her lips against his, of Leary's laughter ringing like music. No, he said finally, voice steady. I don't regret it for a second. She smiled, resting her head on his chest. Good, because neither do I. Their kiss that night was slower, deeper, filled with certainty rather than desperation. The kind of kiss that sealed futures rather than testing boundaries. Later in the quiet of night, Jack lay awake with Atara nestled against him, her skin cool against his warmth. He listened to her steady breathing, stared at the alien constellations through the open balcony, and thought of the strange path that had brought him here. From a solitary mechanic to a protector of a child, from an outsider to a trusted member of a noble house, from fixing broken machines to mending broken lives. You're thinking again, Atara murmured, sleepily, silver-flecked eyes catching faint light as she stirred. Jack chuckled softly. Caught me. What about this time? Just wondering what other adventures are waiting for us, he admitted. She propped herself on one elbow, studying him. With human ingenuity and Nilarian wisdom combined, I believe the possibilities are endless. He smiled, pulling her close. Then I say let's find out. The next morning, Leary burst into the workshop, excitement practically radiating from her. Jack, look. I upgraded the visor. She had attached a new module, tiny sensors woven into delicate filigree. Now it can detect energy fluctuations like when someone lies. Jack blinked, impressed. Kiddo, you just invented the galaxy's first portable lie detector. Atara raised an eyebrow, clearly both amused and mildly alarmed. Let us hope she uses it wisely. Jack laughed, lifting Leary into a hug. With a teacher like her mother, I'm not worried. The girl giggled proud and unburdened, her laughter echoing off the workshop walls. For Jack, it was the sweetest sound in the universe. As weeks turned into months, Jack knew there would be new battles. Other houses might plot, other rivals might rise. Humanity's place among the stars would remain precarious. But he also knew this, he was no longer alone. He had a family now, a daughter who reminded him every day that ingenuity could turn despair into hope, a partner whose strength and love anchored him in a world that had once felt foreign, a home that, though built by aliens, now carried the sound of human laughter, human stubbornness, human heart. And in a galaxy filled with civilizations older, stronger, and more advanced, perhaps that was enough. Because the secret wasn't superior technology or vast empires. The secret was simpler. Humanity survived and thrived not by being the strongest, but by being the most adaptable, by seeing problems differently, by caring enough to act when others would not. Jack Harmon smiled as he adjusted his tools, Atara's voice drifting from the balcony and Larry's laughter filling the air. Sometimes he thought being human was the greatest advantage of all.